you Willikers here, and welcome back to the Holy Land. There are places in the Holy Land where history seems almost hidden beneath the soil, waiting patiently to be discovered. Magdala is one of those places. Today, quiet excavations overlook the gentle waters of the Sea of Galilee. The wind still blows across the shoreline much as it did 2,000 years ago. The hills rise in the distance, and the same lake that carried the fishing boats of Jesus' disciples still reflects the changing light. Yet beneath these stones lies the story of a town that once pulsed with life. Welcome to Magdala. This ancient fishing town flourished during the time of Jesus. Fishermen carried their catches from the Sea of Galilee to the busy marketplace. Merchants traveled the roads bringing goods from distant lands. Families filled these homes with laughter, labor, and prayer. Then, after the Roman destruction of the region in the 1st century, Magdala gradually disappeared beneath layers of earth. For nearly 2,000 years, much of this town remained hidden. Only recently has it begun to emerge once again. As archaeologists carefully remove centuries of soil, an entire 1st century Jewish town is revealing itself before our eyes. Stone streets, homes, marketplaces. Ritual baths used for ceremonial purification. Industrial areas where fish from the Sea of Galilee were salted and prepared to trade throughout the Roman world. Every shovel of earth uncovers another page of history. One of the most extraordinary discoveries here is the synagogue. Unlike many ancient synagogues that were built generations after the time of Jesus, this one dates directly to the 1st century. It was standing while Jesus walked throughout Galilee. When we stand inside its ancient walls, it is impossible not to wonder, did Jesus teach here? The Gospels tell us that he traveled from town to town preaching in the synagogues of Galilee. Since Magdala was an important community during his ministry, many scholars believe it is entirely possible that Jesus himself stood within this very building. Imagine the scene. Men seated on the stone benches surrounding the room. The reading of the scriptures. The quiet anticipation as a traveling rabbi begins to teach. Perhaps these stones once echoed with the voice of Christ. One remarkable artifact discovered here has become known as the Magdala stone. Beautifully carved with sacred symbols from the temple in Jerusalem, it may have served as the platform upon which the Torah scrolls were placed during worship. It is one of the most significant archaeological finds connected with 1st century Judaism. Walking through these excavations, the Bible begins to feel wonderfully tangible. These are not imaginary places. These are real streets where children once played, real homes where meals were prepared, real pathways where sandals stirred the dust beneath ordinary feet. And among those ordinary people lived one extraordinary woman, Mary Magdalene. The Bible introduces her simply and honestly. Jesus had delivered her from 7 demons. The scriptures do not explain exactly what that meant. We are left only with the certainty that her life had once been overwhelmed by darkness until she encountered the one who brought healing, freedom, hope, and light. From that moment forward, everything changed. Mary became one of Jesus' most devoted followers. For centuries, many traditions mistakenly identified Mary Magdalene as a repentant prostitute. Yet the Gospels themselves never say this. Instead, they consistently portray her as a faithful disciple. She traveled with Jesus and the 12. She helped support his ministry. She listened to his teaching. And when many others abandoned him, she remained. That faithfulness became most visible on the darkest day in history. As Jesus hung upon the cross, Mary Magdalene was there. She watched him suffer. She witnessed his death. She saw where his body was placed inside the tomb. Imagine the grief that must have filled her heart. Every hope she had carried seemed buried beneath that great stone. But love does remarkable things. Before sunrise on the first day of the week, while darkness still covered the garden, Mary returned to the tomb, not because she expected a miracle, simply because she loved him. She found the stone rolled away. The tomb was empty. At first, she thought, someone has taken his body. Then she saw a man standing nearby. She did not recognize him until he spoke one simple word, Mary. Only her name, nothing more. Yet in that single word, everything changed. She recognized the voice she knew so well. The risen Christ stood before her. The first person to witness the resurrection was not a king, not a priest, not one of the powerful rulers of the world. It was Mary Magdalene, a woman whose life had once been shattered, now entrusted with proclaiming history's greatest victory. Jesus told her, "Go to my brothers and tell them." And so Mary became the first witness of the resurrection, the first messenger of Easter morning, the first to announce that death had been defeated forever. As I continue walking through Magdala, I cannot help wondering whether Mary herself once walked these very streets. Perhaps she came to this synagogue. Perhaps she passed through this marketplace. Perhaps she stood along this shoreline, looking across the same waters where Jesus taught from a fishing boat. We cannot know for certain, but we do know something even more important. Jesus did not define Mary by her brokenness. He defined her by what his grace could make of her. That may be the greatest lesson Magdala still teaches today. God delights in restoring lives. He sees beyond our failures, beyond our fears, beyond the chapters we wish had never been written. God's mercy writes new chapters. As these archaeologists patiently uncover what has been buried for centuries, I am reminded that God often does something very similar within us. He gently uncovers forgotten hopes. He removes layers of fear. He restores what we believe had been lost forever. Perhaps each of us carries places within our hearts that need that kind of excavation. Places where his grace can still bring light. As our visit to Magdala comes to an end, these ancient stones leave us with one final invitation. Listen carefully. The risen Christ still calls people the same way he called Mary. Not with thunder, not with spectacle, but personally, by name. May we learn to recognize his voice as she did. May we follow him with the same faithful heart. And may we leave this ancient place remembering that the greatest miracle of Magdala was never simply the town itself. It was one transformed life that became the very first witness to the resurrection of Jesus Christ.